last week I took our entire team on a 4-day retreat. And we went on this retreat because this year has been incredible. It's also been a lot of work, and we needed a break. And as I was leaving the property that we held the retreat on, I couldn't get Google Maps to connect. Like, it just wouldn't connect and give me the directions that I needed. And, here's the funny thing. The whole point of the retreat was to go somewhere where we could get off the grid. We could unplug. No phones were allowed. And so here I am. I'm leaving the retreat. I'm in this blissful state. I've unplugged for 4 days. And as I'm driving off the property, I realized I have no idea how to get home. And I can't get Google Maps to connect, and I start freaking out. There are cars behind me. I'm going to have to decide in about 200 yards whether I'm going right, I'm going left, I'm going straight. I don't know. I'm starting to get stressed out. So what do? Well, naturally, I pull over. I pull over because I don't want to get to the stop sign and have these cars behind me. I don't want to make the left turn or the right turn and not know where I'm going. And here, as I am pulled over on the side of the drive out of this property and the other cars are passing me by, I just sat there and I turned off my phone and I was waiting for it to come back online to see if it would connect. And as I'm sitting there, this older dude in a golf cart pulls up beside my door and he kind of like waves at me through the window. And I look over and I roll down my window and he's like, "Ma'am, are you lost? Do you need some help?" And I laughed and I said, "Yes, I do need some help. But basically, I just need to take a minute and figure out where I am so I can figure out where I'm going." And that's what you and I are going to do with these 6 questions. You are going to pull over right now, metaphorically speaking, so that you can figure out where you are. And then as I ask you these 6 questions, it's going to help you figure out where you want to go next. See, everybody misses this step when it comes to setting goals or making resolutions or trying to create a pivot in your business or in what you're doing with school or your career. You just keep flying down the highway of life. You're making decisions a million miles an hour. Oh yeah, make resolutions and goals for next year. That's just added to the to-do list at the end of the year, along with buying presents for people and doing this and doing that. And the problem with going through life like that is that you'll just create goals and resolutions for what you think you should do. But have you really stopped just for a second and taken time to think about what you really want? Not what you should do, but what do you want? What's working in your life right now? What's not working? What are you willing to do the work for in order to have something new in your life? And what are you not willing to do the work for? And in a couple episodes, I'm going to talk to you about the research related to goals and the 2 requirements that you need in order to create a goal that you will actually stick to and care about. And I'm going to tell you right now what those 2 things are, and we'll go deeper into it later, but you need to know what you want and you need to know why you have that goal. What I love about these 6 questions is that they help you determine what you want, why you want it, and they also help you illuminate the way forward so that you can make these goals happen. And I'm so excited for you because by the end of the conversation that you and I are going to have today, you're going to feel completely different. I'm going to feel completely different because every time I ask myself these 6 questions, it's just like so motivating and clarifying. And you're going to be so excited about the next 12 months of your life because you're going to realize that the best days, the best years of your life, they're ahead of you. Some of the best friends that you're going to meet in your life, you haven't even met them yet. And the version of yourself that is waiting for you to arrive, it's waiting for you in this coming year. And so these 6 questions work because they're grounded in a very simple mathematical principle. In order for you to create a set of directions, you must have where you're starting from and where you want to go next. It is impossible for Google Maps to give you directions unless you put in where are you starting, where are you going. And a major mistake that so many of you make is that you jump right into the new thing where you're going without understanding where you are. Just think about me last week as I'm leaving the retreat. If I didn't stop and wait for Google Maps to register where I was, I'd just be driving down the highway in the wrong direction, spinning around, not connecting. It's complete stupidity. You have to stop for a second so that you can connect to where you are now. I get it. I am afraid to stop too. I'm afraid to look in the rearview mirror. I'm afraid to kind of really think about where I am. But wait until you see what you learn about yourself when you answer these 6 questions. And if you're driving in a car or you're running errands or you're listening to my voice at the gym or you're watching on YouTube, you can just keep listening and watching as I walk you through these questions. And then what you're probably going to want to do is you're probably going to want to come back to the episode after you've printed out that free journal at melrobbins.com/bestyear and dive even deeper into the wisdom contained in each and every one of these 6 questions. And one more pro tip, make sure you share this episode and you share the download with your family. In fact, do it with your family. Do it with your team at work. Do this with your mastermind group in business or some of your best friends. This is an excellent way to connect with people. And it's one of the reasons why I love doing it at the end of every year with Chris and our kids. We answer the questions. We share our answers with one another. We go deeper with one another. In fact, when I do this with my kids and with Chris, they always remind me of things that I forgot about and things that I'm not giving myself credit for. And so you're going to find the same thing too when you share this with your friends and family. Alrighty, you ready? Me too. Let's jump into the 6 questions. The first 3 that I'm going to ask you, they help you figure out exactly where you are right now, and they unearth the wisdom that is contained in the last 12 months of your life and where you are right now. And the final 3 questions that I'm going to ask you are borrowed from transformational business consulting practices. And these last 3 questions are going to help you identify specifically what you need to do to move your life forward in a direction that is deeply personal and fulfilling for you. So, question number 1, what are the highlights from the past year of your life? I'm going to ask you that again. Question number 1, what are the highlights from the past year of your life? So you're going to think back over the past 12 months, and I want you to start collecting all of the highlights from the past 12 months. Now, let me give you a few tips here. Do not do this from your memory because you will not believe how much you have forgotten. In fact, you can even test yourself on this one. Just try answering the question, what are the highlights from the past year of your life? And you can think back January, February, March. You can think to the spring, the summer, the fall, the beginning of the winter. Think about the highlights. But if you really want to get full credit for all the highlights of this past year of your life, you want to print out the journal at melrobbins.com/bestyear. And then you want to pull out your camera roll and pull out your calendar and go through the past 12 months, week by week in your camera roll or on Snapchat or on TikTok. You can look at all the highlights there and you will be shocked by how much you've already forgotten. There were people you had lunch with. Forgot about that. There were day trips that you took. There were books that you read. There were places that you visited. There were trips that you took. There were things that you witnessed, stuff that you experienced. Oh, remember that outpatient surgery? Nope, forgot about that, Mel. You're going to be shocked by how much happened to you this year that you don't even remember. So look at your camera roll when we're done with this episode. Look at your calendar and ask yourself the question, what are the highlights of this past year of my life? First of all, holy cow, we marked the 1-year anniversary of this podcast. Pretty incredible. Oh my gosh, I forgot that Kendall graduated from college this year. And she sang the national anthem in front of 60,000 people. I know. I shared about it on the podcast, but I kind of forgot about it. There's a bazillion photos of sunsets and sunrises. And you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of the fact that I really took peace and being present in the moment more seriously. And I can see that as a real highlight this year because of the number of photographs. I see a lot of photos with new friends, and it reminds me that I was really happy in this new community. Oh, whoa. Remember the story I told you about the owl that we rescued? It happened on the night of my 27th anniversary. I talked about that incredible story of the owl that was hit by the car and rescuing it on a rainy night and holding it in my arms with a towel wrapped around it for 30 minutes. Whoa. I would have forgotten about that. Oh, This is clearly the year that I started wearing one-piece bathing suits. We opened a new studio. That was a huge win for me personally, opening the new studio for our production company. I was so scared to commit to a space and to build it out. I mean, a 5-year lease? That's placing a bet on your business when you sign a 5-year lease. And it really shows me that I used to think that my success was luck. And I realize now, this is a huge highlight, that that's not true. I work very, very, very hard. And signing that lease, which I took a photo of the day that we did it, that was me placing a bet on myself. And that's a highlight. So why are you and I doing this? Why are you looking at the highlights? I'll tell you why. Because you need to remind yourself that your life is way bigger than how you feel in this moment. And way too often at the end of the year, or in those moments when you're trying to change, you're in a temporary emotional state. And you forget the full context of who you are, what you've done, all the things that you've experienced, good and bad, what you know based on all of that. And this question, what are the highlights of this past year of my life? It brings all of that wisdom right to your face, and that wisdom is going to help guide you in terms of what you're going to do in this next year of your life. What are the highlights of this past year of my life? And now the second question, what were the hardest aspects of this past year? And I want you to really think about that. What were the hardest aspects of this year for you? And again, I'm going to guide you in how you can go a little bit deeper into answering this question. First of all, photos in a calendar are super, super helpful. But what also helps me with this question, because this can kind of be a big stumper, you know what I mean? And I don't want you to stay in the big themes of what was hard. I want you to get really specific and be reminded. And so have your phone out, have your photos out, have your calendar out. And I also want to share with you that I like to break this particular question into 5 different categories because I get much richer data. So what are the categories that you're going to think about when you think about the hardest aspect of this year? Number 1, health and wellness. Number 2, your career, money, school. Number 3, relationships, love and friendship. Number 4, fun and happiness. Number 5, purpose, spirituality, and meaning. Those are the big categories. And don't you worry, in the free journal at melrobbins.com/bestyear, I've got all of this spelled out for you with lots of room to write and lots of prompts for you. So it's really going to help you go deeper. Now, what's interesting is that even though I just told you my highlight reel, I can see that I had some really big struggles in each one of these 5 areas. And yes, you may find that areas of struggle can also overlap with your areas of highlights. Like, remember how I said that, this was clearly the year that I started wearing one-piece bathing suits and longer shorts. Well, let me tell you why. That was a highlight, but it also highlights a struggle that I had in the category of health and wellness. And one of those struggles for me personally was menopause. I am fully in menopause. My body has profoundly changed, and I struggled with it this year. And I know that, and I'll explain in a bit why unearthing struggles for you is part of the important process of figuring out what goals you're going to have moving forward. Second category, career, money, and school. This has been a year of massive highlights in my career. It has also been a huge struggle, and let me tell you why. The hyper growth of this podcast nearly killed me. In launching this podcast, it had always been a dream of mine. I shared about it a lot. Not a single person on our team has ever done the job that they're doing right now. And so we all stepped into the launch of this podcast super excited with massive dreams. And the reality of running a show this big ran our asses over. Holy smokes. And it was a real struggle to stay ahead, to keep our heads above water, to respond to the demand. And I realize that sounds like an amazing problem to have, but I have felt like I've been hyperventilating all year and grateful at the same time, but it's been a struggle. Okay, relationships, love and friendship, fun and happiness, both the same struggle. I spent way too much time working this year because of the success of this podcast and because we were so caught off guard. And by the way, we're hiring. So please, if you have mad experience for a show this size, if you are you're like, I got to work on that team. I got to be on the number 5 most followed podcast in the world. This is my jam. And I've got the experience to prove it. We want to hear from you for real. Purpose, spirituality, and meaning. This is another area where highlights also overlap with struggle. I mentioned that one of the highlights is seeing so many photos of sunrises and sunsets, which were a signal to me that I really tapped into a level of peace and contentment and presence living here in Vermont. But when I look back at the early part of the year, I was still new to living here. And back in January and February, Mel Robbins was lonely. She was up on this mountain, staring off with a panic in her face. I can see the look of struggle in her face and kind of acknowledging that and seeing it and seeing that it was a struggle, the loneliness that I felt being in a new community. It's really important. And this is why looking at the hard things in your life is a critical step before you look ahead, okay? Last year, I did this exercise at the end of the year. I asked myself these 6 questions with my husband and our kids. And the struggle that really dominated my life 24 months ago was a deep level of betrayal that had happened in my business and in relationships in my business. And so going through the exercise and being honest with myself about that struggle led me to create goals for this year that were around addressing those issues of loneliness in my life and the issues of a lack of systems and betrayal in my business. And that's why I'm in a better place as I'm talking to you right now. That's why I feel like a totally different Mel Robbins than the Mel I see in the photos in January or February 12 months ago, where I was still really lonely. And knowing what's hard in your life allows you to do what researchers tell you that you need to do if you want to set goals that you care about. The goals that you set need to be relevant. They need to be relevant to who you are right now, where you are right now, what's good, what's bad, what you're struggling with. Because when you make goals to improve based on what's been hard, the decades of research studies will show you that those goals then become tied to something that's personal to you. And that taps into what researchers call intrinsic motivation, which is that internal fuel that comes from deeply personal change, deeply personal meaning. If it matters to you to not be lonely again this year, you'll do something about it. If it matters to you to not be hyperventilating when you go up a flight of stairs, you'll do something about it. And that's why answering question number 2 and digging into your challenges is so important. Your challenges are trying to teach you something. So take this part of it seriously. What was the hardest aspect of this year for you? Maybe you lost somebody you love this year and you've been grieving. And by writing that down and unpacking it, you realize that when you look ahead, you want to give yourself permission to be happy again. You want to work on that sense of connection and happiness and meaning in the wake of this. And when your goals are informed by the things that you've struggled with and that you're moving through, those goals take on a richness to them, a meaning to them. And that's why this matters so much. Ooh, I'm so happy you are here with me because you and I are going to have one of my all-time favorite conversations today.